Gracias for getting fright-tastic with me once more, amigos. This is Jaime En Fuego, and you are on Enfuegotainment, where I cover the hottest entertainment with an edge, and I've been doing a very special presentation for the month of October. I have basically been going through the entire Tales from the Crypt series. Yes, all 93 episodes, man, and just doing 3 of these a day, because, you know, 31 days in the month of October, 93 episodes. It was almost too easy. It was perfect. It was almost destined and meant to be. And here on Enfuegotainment, I basically covered the Bueno, the Malo, and the Feo with all of my installments. And so, yeah, with 3 a day, as I mentioned, it worked out splendidly. So this is part 18, man. Yeah, part 18. I'm officially into the 5th season of Tales from the Crypt now. This episode is basically going to entail the final episode of season 4 and then the first 2 from season 5. So getting right into it, the Bueno episode is very hilariously titled The Death of Some Salesman. Yes, we all know what that's a play on words of, the death of a salesman. And this one was actually directed by Gilbert Adler, who by this point was producing Tales from the Crypt. He originally started out as like doing some writing stuff along with A.L. Katz, and so both of these guys, they have risen in the ranks by this point in the series. Adler's first time directing was the What's Cookin' episode, which had Christopher Reeves in it, and yeah, I mean, they had previously collaborated on quite a few. They helped out with Yellow, which was the one that Zemeckis did. They'd done This'll Kill Ya. They also did Dead Weight. They scripted that one for Tobe Hooper, which is one of my favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes. So yeah, I mean, Katz by this time was the co-producer, and Adler was the producer. So yeah, pretty interesting, you know, the way that they rose in the ranks, as I mentioned. But this episode is very, very strange, but yet very, very bueno. And it's the good one for the sheer fact that you have a wild, just assortment of performances by the British chameleon, Mr. Tim Curry. Curry the Chameleon, as I like to think of him as, because he was Darkness, the crazy demon dude in Legend, an amazing performance, man. He was also Pennywise in Stephen King's It, that iconic adaptation of, you know, possibly King's best novel. He was also Rocky Horror Picture. I mean, so the list goes on and on and on. And you've got this guy, Ed Begley Jr., who I'm sure you've seen in many things. I often think of like not Best in Show, A Mighty Wind is one that I often think of for him, that Christopher Guest film from the Spinal Tap dude. But yeah, Begley is a traveling salesman who is basically scamming people with these fake funeral plots and stuff, and the episode hilariously starts out with him getting some tail, and you get to see something that HBO was known for featuring, and that's why Tales from the Crypt had to be on HBO, for the sex, the violence, and the stuff that we all crave. But yeah, Tim Curry basically plays multiple people in this crazy Hicktaw family that Mr. Begley tries to swindle, and as being Tales from the Crypt, you can probably guess where things are going to go from here. But yeah, great performances, oddly written. I mean, it's not the best Tales from Crypt ever, but yeah, it's the best of the bunch today, the best of the 3. So yeah, it is most definitely the bueno. Yes, the death of some salesman. So then, of course, we have to jump into the Malo. Yes, that's right. And the Malo is entitled Curiosity Killed. And yeah, it's a very strange episode. It kind of has to deal with almost like a Fountain of Youth type serum, or I guess potion of sorts. You've got this elderly couple, 2 elderly couples actually, that are out in this big huge RV in the woods, and you know, the wife is a super nagger. She's played by Margaret Kidder, who Margaret Kidder I should say, and everybody knows her most you know, notoriously as being Lois Lane to Christopher Reeve's Superman, and you know, those original few films. But you also have Kevin McCarthy, who was in the original 1956 Body Snatchers, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And he also had an Oscar nomination for, yeah, you guessed it, Death of a Salesman. Are we seeing patterns here? That wasn't intentional. This episode is from season 4. It's the final one in season 4, whereas the episode I was just talking about was at the beginning of season 5. But yeah, it's they're a couple that is just quarreling and feuding, and they've got like 45 years marriage under their belts and stuff like that. Scripted by Stanley Ralph Ross, who did so many different things in his career. He wrote a large bulk of the 60s Batman, yeah, with Adam West, who we're actually going to be talking about here in a moment for our final episode for the Feo. He also helped out with All in the Family, G.I. Joe. Guy taught at USC. He did tons and tons of stuff, but yeah, this is not one of his better hours, regrettably. And then you've got Elliot Silverstein returning, and we actually saw him doing The Reluctant Vampire with Malcolm McDowell, which was one of my favorite episodes in season 3, and so he returns here. He's part of the OG directors from the original Twilight Zone, yeah, back in the 60s, and so kind of befitting for him to be returning here to anthology horror. But yeah, I gotta tell you, well, it's not the worst Tales from the Crypt that you could see. The twist is very kind of odd, and we get some really awesome practical effects in there when some change-up things are happening with the characters, you know, because of this crazy potion. But yeah, it is definitely the weakest link of these 3 episodes, and yeah, season 4 regrettably did not end very memorably. So yeah, the MALO today is definitely curiosity killed. So yeah, what are you gonna do, right? And lastly, we have the Feo, the ugly man, the thing that's gonna make you like turn your eyes in disgust. Well, maybe not, you know. And this is called As Ye Sow. And the crazy thing about this one is that you've got Hector Elizondo, who I always remember from Chicago Hope, but he's been in tons of other things. And we're going back to that very cliched Tales from the Crypt plotline of his wife is presumably cheating on him, and so he goes and gets a private investigator to kind of follow her around. The first one you see is Adam West, which is kind of an amusing cameo, and then after that, he's like, nah, this guy's not doing a very good job. So he goes and gets Sam Waterston, who I always think of from a NBC show called I'll Fly Away, where, you know, it took place in the 50s, and there was like all the racial stuff going on in the 50s and 60s and whatnot, but most people know him from Law & Order. That's the show he spent like 16 seasons on, I think. Totally insane. So yeah, he's basically the private detective who is helping out Mr. Elizondo, keeping an eye on his Irish wife, who he's positive is getting the bang down with a priest, a disgruntled, you know, shamed priest who, like, you know, has had all kinds of marks from the Catholic Church and whatnot. The interesting tidbit here is that it's directed by Kyle MacLachlan, who we already saw a few seasons ago in Carrion Death, which was a great Tales from the Crypt episode. I designated it as my bueno, and it was about this guy who was trying to escape down to Mexico and ends up getting this this cop chasing him, and they get handcuffed together, and he kills the cop, and then he's got to figure out how the hell he's gonna, you know, get across the Mexican border with this cop, you know, handcuffed to him. And so yeah, but Kyle MacLachlan actually is directing this episode. You know, I'm not sure what else he's directed. I was kind of scouring the IMDb's and the Wikipedias and stuff, and couldn't find too much information, but everybody knows him as being the frequent David Lynch collaborator, as I mentioned in the Carrion Death review. You know, he did Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, and the list goes on and on and on. Also Dune. So yeah, very talented guy, and very cool to see him jumping from in front of the camera to behind the camera here for Tales from the Crypt. And then also you have the return of Ron Finley as the writer, and he did a very great episode from the 4th season, I believe it was, called The New Arrival. Really awesome. And then he also did Undertaking Pallor, which was that one I mentioned, had kind of the Goonies type vibe to it. But yeah, this one is Feo for the sheer fact that infidelity is always Feo, it's always ugly. The twist is very awesome, and the twist actually involves somebody who we have seen previously in the Fred Dekker written and directed Tales from the Crypt, which was entitled The Thing Called Death. And so yeah, Miguel Ferrer makes a surprise appearance, and he is most definitely part of the Feo. So yeah, there you have it. There is the 3 episodes that I have covered today. You know, none were a slam bang winner. I must say the favorite was most definitely The Death of Some Salesmen, because Tim Curry knocked it home. But yeah, all of these episodes are interesting, I'd say, and probably worth a view. So yeah, if you get this far into the Tales from the Crypt series, if you're jumping into season 5, or if you're just, you know, picking and choosing, definitely check out The Death of Some Salesmen. It's awesome, and I believe this was another one that Mr. John Kassir mentioned when we were all, you know, chatting and interviewing him for the horror show at Mad Monster 2015 here in Phoenix. So I have been Jaime En Fuego. I must extend a grande gracias to all of you Fright fans for tuning in. You can catch all of my scarific content at thehorrorshowchannel.com, and that's not just me, that's also my co-hosts Cecil Laird, Susie Von Slaughter, and Marsha Parker, Ms. #Rainbow Rules, and that's where we do all of our freaky coverage. It's so much fun. This is just some bonus content that I was doing for my own personal channel. So I've been Jaime En Fuego. You can find me as my name is spelled below on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and obviously here on YouTube. So I look forward to seeing all of you mañana for the 19th installment of my Tales from the Crypt coverage. So shout out to John Kassir, shout out to HBO and all those peeps. I want to see more Tales from the Crypt episodes. Let's get that licensing figured out and resurrect this program. I love anthology horror, and I love the way you guys always did it, so please consider it. I know you're probably not going to hear this, but I had to at least say it. So in any event, I look forward to talking more Tales from the Crypt with all of you San Amigos mañana. So until then, stay metal and stay scared.